friends and foes. Welcome to Art Book Club. It's book club day. Today we have Visual Nomad here with me as my co-host for Art Book Club. And also, I've upgraded you from my guest to my co-host because you're here all the time. I hope you appreciate that.
Well, dang. Thank you.
And
I'll try to fill the seat well.
I mean, you're already doing it. You're basically just getting a promotion for the work you're already doing. It's kind of like a job you have too long, you know?
Thank you.
Today or I guess this last month, we read Atomic Habits, which is, if you're watching, it's right here. This is by James Clear, and it is a book about habits and about implementing them into your life. This book is it seems like a hefty book, but it's zipped by pretty fast for me. Did you finish the book?
I did finish the book.
Yeah. It's succinct. It's one of those books you can put down for a second, pick up and flip to a page and be like, yes, this is how I can implement this new habit into my life. I kind of wish I had started out this kind of adventure into this book with like a habit that I wanted to implement before I picked up this book, you know? And then had like gone through the steps as I was reading the book into implementing said habit, but instead I just read it and I don't really have any new habits that I want to put into my life right now. So it's like good information for later. I don't know. Did you install a new habit in yourself through reading this book?
Installed several new habits into myself during this book. Yes, I did. I will say, do not pick up this book half-heartedly. Because whether you want to take it seriously or not, it will make you take it seriously if you keep reading it.
For sure. I was like, this will be a fun book for Art Book Club because a lot about making art is about building good art habits, especially when you want to be a professional or do this like within any sort of longevity. And it gets granular. It's very fun.
Yeah.
What were some of the new habits that you wanted to implement?
So I know I do well with like to-do lists, like a checklist to go through every day. And I have a hard time getting myself to sit down and do that, even though it benefits me a lot. So sometimes like throughout the day, I'll just kind of meander and do things as they come to mind instead of actually having a plan. So what I did was I tied that to every morning while I'm sitting eating my breakfast, watch YouTube videos. It's something I enjoy. And as you get into this book, you will learn you should tie things to positive things that you enjoy. And super positive things are really good at anchoring habits. And I'm like, well, it's kind of an addiction, so I could hook it to an addiction. How good is that? So after I finish my breakfast, I have my to-do list there, and I work on that while I'm watching YouTube videos. So that's done. And then
that's pretty
another
sweet.
one was wanted to do yoga more often because I watched this like 85-year-old artist who is this like a Japanese calligraphy artist, and he does like these big pieces of calligraphy, and it's like his full body. And they showed him like doing his whole workout thing, and he's like, body is a tool just as much as your brush is. You should take care of it. And I'm like, yes, I know. So I'm like, okay, let's implement something good for my body. So I anchored that to being able to drink my coffee in the morning. I do that before I'm allowed to have my coffee. So it's like, two things that are both addictions that are hooked to very positive habits.
That's amazing. That's very, very cool. I'm glad that you really attached onto attach something that you want to implement into something that you've already got going on. That was one of like the greatest, I think, hacks, if you want to say that right. James talks about in this book. He has a whole system for adding habits into your life that is it's like, if you do this, try this. If you do this, try this. If you have this bad habit, consider this. Like, it's so malleable, I guess, and easy to, get good things going in your life. Attaching things to habits that you've already got, good or bad, is really powerful. Really, really powerful. I'm just now thinking, I'm like, oh, I did do a habit change at the beginning after I read this book that I kind of forgot about, but it's now a habit that I do, which is, I think, rare for a habit to be this quick. But I used to be really bad about flossing, and I changed my habit to do, instead of brushing my teeth and then trying to remember to floss, I now floss first and then I brush my teeth. I just changed the order. And now I floss like every day. And like, I don't even think about it. I just like, instead of picking up the brush first, I picked up the floss first, and I'm like, oh, this is magic. This is
right, because it's the positive affirmation you really need to link to habit that you're trying to build. Like, talks about why people that haven't smoked for years end up starting to smoke again. It's not because they're addicted to the act of smoking, it's that they've built this habit around smoking, and they've literally rewired their brain to, once they have the trigger, it hits the crave, then they do the action, and then the habit is completed. So it's like, if you start that chain reaction, it's going to work. Like,
yeah,
that's how our brains work. And so, yeah, I think that was for me, the biggest takeaway was like, oh yeah, this makes sense. Like, what things do I already do instead of fighting myself? Things do I already do during the day? I know our habits that I could, habit stacking, which is another thing that he talks about. Like, well, let's maximize this and stack the heck out of all these habits that I need to do. So
it's quite incredible. Wendy says, I now keep my floss in my shower, and now I floss in the shower. Weird, maybe, but did it work? Yes. Okay, that's excellent.
Hey, I mean, whatever works with your brain. Exactly. I mean, seriously. There's not a right or wrong way to do this. It's just you figure out how you work.
That's also something James talks about. It's like, what gets the job done gets the job done, Like, it's, if you have to do something that seems very strange in order to get you to do the habit that you want to have, it's top tier. I kind of want to go through the chapters, kind of just like one by one, because he's got a system in this book. And spoiler, if you like anything that we're talking about, you should listen to this book or read it. I think he reads the audiobook. I actually read the physical book this time, but it's so good, and I think it'd be interesting. So he starts out the book telling a really personal story about how when he was younger, he was an athlete, and then something dramatic happened, and he wasn't able to be the athlete anymore. His whole identity changed because of, I think it was an accident. Is that right?
I think so, yeah.
Yes. Like facial fractures, like couldn't leave the hospital for a long time, that kind of accident. Just really, really intense.
Right.
And, oh, that's right, he was a baseball player. I had to look that up. I was like, it's one sport. I was like, was it hockey? It was baseball. And in order to recover from the accident and then eventually go back and re-enter the sport, he had like created these systems of habit making in order to heal, in order to change his life to be better, because he had to miss out on a huge chunk of time where he was just recovering. And I think that's very cool as like an origin story, a villain story, you might even say. And and it's quite good. He starts off with the fundamentals, and the fundamentals are, it starts off with compounding effects with your habits, and how when you make a small change, like for me, just switching the order of brushing my teeth and flossing, then the small change becomes, okay, you floss one day and you have better dental hygiene, right? But then you floss the next day because you're starting to implement that, and over, a month at a time, your gums are stronger, your mouth is healthier, blah, blah, blah. And then like over a year or so, it's like, oh, you have less plaque in your arteries or whatever, right? And sorry if y'all don't like teeth talk. And it's the compounding habits of, you know, making small, tiny changes that lead up to the big changes where it's like, maybe I want to, you know, run a 5K. But it's like, okay, maybe we start that by, you know, taking a walk every day. It's not like you suddenly get up and do a 5K if you haven't been training for it. It's you make the small habits, make the larger changes, the major changes. And that's just in like the first chapter 1. It's very, very cool. It was very inspiring. Do y'all know the?
I think the story about the British bicycling team. Mm-hmm. So short synopsis of the history. Over like 100 and some years, they had never won anything. They hadn't really placed. They just never did anything. Well, they got a new coach, and within a year, they had won like their first race. Now they're one of the most winningest teams of all time. They've won the Tour de France like 5 or 6 times. Mm-hmm. It's insane, the growth. But it basically started out as 1% better every day that you do this. What is that 1% that you can change every day? And that 1% compounds. Like they talked about personal bests. They compounded their personal best into a solid team of bikers that across the board could beat everybody just because they were just trying to be a little bit better every day. It wasn't like they were expecting to win the Tour de France right out of the gate, you know?
Yeah, that was... It's fun to see evidence of the changes happening, especially when something is like a sport and there's like an actual trophy to be won.
Sure.
But it's inspiring. It's interesting. I love that story. I was like, yeah, I want to build better habits. Let's go. So in the first like 3 chapters or so, we go through the fundamentals on why and how to change a habit. So there are like 4 major steps, and the first one, let me find the beautiful system. He like makes a graph in this book that changes over time, like as you read the book, and it's super good. Okay, so you have 4 like laws of changing the habit. Okay, so the first law is the cue. Why are we doing this, right? And what is the craving, and what is the response, and then what is the reward, right? And you have different questions you can ask about your habits. It's like, how can I make it obvious, like the habit itself obvious to what you want to implement into your life? How can I make it attractive? Like, oh, wow, I just can't wait to go on a run today. How do you make it easy? And then how can you make it satisfying, like the reward of it? And he takes each of those 4 questions and like breaks them down.
That's how you make it satisfying. Coffee.
Can I make a satisfying coffee?
I use coffee to anchor my yoga program.
That's great.
So yes, taste is one of those things.
It's so good. So when you were first making your habit, you need to write down what your current habits are, the good or the bad, right? So it's not just, I brush my teeth and I brush my hair and I make my bed, but it's also like, and I spend 45 minutes on Instagram, and I also put my clothes on the floor after I've taken off my pajamas, and I, all the good and the bad, like all your habits. Because, the first step to change is awareness, and becoming aware of them makes you, one, be able to attach good habits to certain behaviors, like making your coffee, but it also lets you become aware of how you spend your time. I'm a big leave the clothes on the floor guy. It's true. I'm also guilty of that. When you notice your bad habits and your good habits and everything in between, you are able to better regulate how you're spending your time. I tried to do this for about a week or so, where I was like, okay, I sat down and I was like, what are all my habits? Like, what are all of them? And for a while I was like, I know I have habits that I'm just like unaware of, right? And I think it's easier when you live with somebody else because they can help you be like, what are my bad habits? And like Luke was so quick to point out, he's like, oh yeah, you leave empty containers in the fridge. And I'm like, oh, that's something I do. And so what I did for about 3 days is every like hour or so, I had like this little alarm, and I just wrote down in my calendar like what I did. And it was a little bit obsessive, but I was like really curious as to see what my habits were. And leaving almost empty containers in the fridge was one of them. But it was like, how much time am I spending on X, Y, and Z? How much time am I spending on reading? Reading is time that tends to get away from me. I just love to read, so I'll spend like over an hour a day doing it. And it was very revealing. So if you're like wondering what your habits are, like what your tendencies are, you should give that a try just for like a couple of days. It's super interesting. And then he introduces habit stacking, which is what Nomad has talked about at the very beginning of this, where if you have a good habit that you want to implement, you attach it to a habit that you've already got, something that's just so second nature to you. Make coffee in the morning. You do your yoga before the coffee, and you attach it to it. So every time you want to have coffee, you got to do the yoga first, and it makes you aware, just like the toothbrush and the floss. Yeah. Did you have do you have any other like habit stacking examples that you noticed that you already had? Like, what are some habits that you've attached to yourselves?
Well, I think that one thing that I learned was that all of my habits start at my making breakfast. Mm-hmm. My habit that I've built around making breakfast every morning and sitting down, taking time to eat. Since that is already there, I build things off of that. I built my my to-do list habit off of that. Mm-hmm. Something that I already do. And after that, I was like, okay, well, I need to fill my water bottle. I already make my coffee in the morning after I'm done eating breakfast. So I make my coffee. I have to taste my coffee so I know how good it's gonna be. So I take that, I make that, I put it in my room. That forces me, not that I had an issue with this, but it forces me to make my bed, because in order to get into the closet to get my yoga mat, I have to move the pillows from my bed onto my bed. That means my bed needs to be made. So that gets done too. So then I can do my yoga and I can come in and my coffee is already waiting for me there. So it's this stack that I've built throughout the day. And then, of course, I have the chunk of time that I've set aside for studio time. Mm-hmm. From 1 to 6 every day. And then, the rest of the night is kind of open unless I decide to plan something for that. But yeah, it's, in that window, I can stack so much stuff and get so much done. Just by basically building on top of whatever breakfast routine I already have, It's kind of crazy. Because I think we all have these base habits that we've created one way or another. If we sit and, like you said, if we evaluate our day and we go, oh, I guess I do. I do that every day. Mm-hmm. Brush your teeth. That's a habit that we do every day. Tie things to that. It's like you said, you had to switch when you floss because brushing the teeth is the reward for you. Mm-hmm. Something that you enjoy, sounds like. So it's like, oh, okay. You put that nice little carrot at the end of the rope there to get you to go for it,
Already established. It's really good. Suiku says, would be doing laundry every weekend considered a habit stack? When does the weekend do laundry? I feel like that's a much vaguer habit stack. I think it could be even more specific. I also do my laundry on the weekends, but I do it where it's like, okay, I get up on the weekend, like say it's Saturday or something, I put in a load of laundry, and then I do my breakfast, right? So it's like, it's even more specific, but yes, in a way that is a habit stack. When you do the habit stacking, you're also being a little bit declarative, right? So in the book, there's an exercise where it's like, after I current habit, I will then new habit. So it's like, or even like before I coffee, I yoga, right? And so you declare that, and then you need to write it down somewhere you can see it, and it becomes a visual cue. You can assign habits to something visual in your space that remind you to do it. So instead of me having the floss in my drawer, I now put it right next to my toothbrush, like right next to it. So I have the visual cue to, oh, I should do that. That one's obvious, but there are many, more subtle cues that get you to actually do the habit. Right. Then you have to design your environment. And that's part of what I just talked about. You design your space so that you are encouraged to do the thing. Say you want to drink more water. You need to have more water bottles around your house that are full of water every morning. So whenever you're always like close by to one, that would be designing your environment to be more effective.
And the first law on that has a section called Motivation is Overrated. Environment often matters more.
Yeah.
He goes through a whole test that they did, for that. And it is like when you step back and look at it, you go, oh, I guess I am a product of my environment or more than, I ever expected to be.
It's good. It's really good. Do I have any designing habits about avoiding using your phone at night? Oh, okay. The first one that comes to mind is put your phone charger away from your bed, like in a different room. Then you don't bring the phone into the room. You can even set your alarm to be really loud if it's on your phone, so you have to get up and leave the room in order to use it. But there are more subtle things that would make that rewarding. That's very like cold turkey. That's very aggressive. But try reading this book. It's pretty good. Okay, so that's the first law. Oh my gosh, there's 4 laws, so let's keep going. Okay, the second law is to make it attractive. So you need to make the habit seem really, really appealing. And part of this is designing your environment. Part of this is saying, like, I'm going to do the habit and declaring yourself. But another thing is temptation building. Pairing an action you want to do with the action that you need to do, right? So can you give me an example of this, of temptation building? So it's like,
I want coffee, but I can't have it until I do my yoga. It really is simple. It's like that simple. In some respects.
I can't buy another book until I check my finances on Fridays, which is a habit for me. On Fridays, I always check all my bank accounts and everything and make sure everything's in order. But I'm not allowed to get a new book, even if it's like not even buying a book, but it's like I can't get a new one from the library until I do that every week. So you make it attractive. It's like a prize. And then I think this next part is really good. Joining a culture where your desired behavior is the normal behavior, right? So say you like wanna do more yoga and you have the means to do this. Going to a yoga class is a very exciting thing. You get to be in a culture of people who also want to do the yoga. And, they have their fun outfits, and it's in a space where it's encouraging you to learn things, and it's like the whole, atmospheric environment for that. That can be really cool, and you can adjust that to whatever your habit is. I really love not paying the dentist to fix my teeth, so I floss more, and that becomes really attractive. Suika says, I do my face routine so I have clean skin. Or I do a workout so I gain muscle to stay healthy and look good. Lots of attractions there. Exactly. You can get as vague or specific as you need to. You can also kind of like reward bracket your habit. So you can do something motivational before your habit and then you have your habit itself and then you have the reward after. So it's like maybe before I'm doing the yoga, I'm putting on some upbeat music that makes me excited to move my body. And then you do the yoga and then, you get your reward. These are just examples. It's so easy to use yoga as an example. Then we go to the next law, which is to make it easy and learning how to reduce friction. And I think something really cool happens in this chapter, which is you can use this habit building to both remove habits and implement habits. So if you are having a habit and it's like, this isn't good for you and it's not leading you to a place where you want to go, you can start adding in more friction to the habit. So looking at your phone before you're going to bed. Removing or like adding friction would be taking your phone charger and putting it in another room, you know? You can design your life around getting rid of a habit or, you know, helping it. And there's some really fun examples in there. A habit that way before this book that I removed, or like friction that I removed, was that sometimes I wouldn't want to go to the art studio. And so I would then, to remove friction so that would be more wanting to go to the art studio, I would make sure that my brushes were cleaned every single time after I was done, right? It's like, I hated coming to the studio and seeing the mess I left behind. I hated seeing the dirty brushes because it didn't make me want to like immediately start painting. It made me need to clean the moment I got into the studio, which was friction. So that's an art example. Yeah.
I mean, I'm OCD, so yeah, that kind of naturally happens for me, but yeah, there are definitely things that I'd like doing dishes. Like, I do dishes immediately after I'm done eating, because then I only have to do maybe one or two, as opposed to a whole sink full of dishes at one time. That is way more appealing to me than having to stand 30 minutes and do, you know, a week's worth of dishes when it could have taken me less than 2 minutes to keep up with it every day, you know?
It's quite good. Sleepy says, I've been swimming for 2 months lately, and I've been going 3 times a week, which wears me out so much that I'm not on my phone as much right before bed. So that would be like a very, very tricky reward, but it would be a reward that works out to get you to do that habit. James Clear, the author, also goes into like how can you make it approachable, right? This new habit. And one of the thing is, can you make that habit take you less than 2 minutes to do in the very beginning? Say you are someone that has like 1 million dishes in the sink and you're like, I need to be better about dishes. Instead of being like, I'm going to do all of the dishes in one go because I want to start a better new life, whatever it is, right? Instead, you should set a timer on your phone. You do 2 minutes worth of dishes. And if you want to keep going from there, you keep going, but otherwise you should stop and then do it again later. By making it short and sweet, short and challenging, whatever it is, you are more likely to do that habit again in the future for longer periods of time. This could even be, I'm going to do yoga for 2 minutes. It might sound like silly in your brain, whatever, like however big this habit is, but if you shorten it to a point where it's like, I could do this in under 5 minutes, I could do this in under 10 minutes, then you're going to be like, oh, I actually have time to do 2 minutes of yoga today. Maybe that's like breath control. Maybe it's doing like a single downward dog, but it's great and it's a start, and that's something to be acknowledged. Yeah, y'all, what is one habit that you really want to have into your life that you don't currently?
I mean, I do yoga, but I would like to roll that into more working out also, not just that. Whatever that looks like, if that means, you know, I go for a 30-minute walk or whatever on top of that.
That's good.
Just being more active.
My current one is I'd like to go to bed earlier. I tend to go to bed around midnight, but I would like it to be around 10:30 or so. And to do that means I need to start getting up earlier the next morning, which is not super natural to me. And that would take a lot of planning and a lot of changing and a lot of environment shifts in my life to do so. But it is something I would like to do, especially as summer rolls around. Wendy says, I want to exercise more. Suiku says, I want to wake up at the same time every day. Yeah, it's pretty good. This book could absolutely help you both with implementing those 2 habits. Just saying.
Sure.
You should try it. Make it satisfying is the 4th law. So we've had make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and now we have make it satisfying, which is where we use reinforcement to give us the reward for the good habit. It's where maybe we use a habit tracker. And have you ever used a habit tracker before?
Yeah, I have, actually.
Did it work out?
Not necessarily for a habit, but it was more of, I used to have a heart rate monitor. That I would wear, and I ended up wearing it all the time, but I would just track different things, and it helped me to be more efficient in my workouts, and of course, it pointed out things that, I didn't even know were there, because it monitored a bunch of different stuff. And so,
cool.
yeah, like you could get on and you could see, okay, this is my average. Because you may go, oh, well, I think my average is this. And then you actually get on the habit tracker and you're like, oh, I guess it's here. Or it may be more, it may be more than you thought, But yeah, it's, I think he points that out really well, is this overarching look at what you do and why you do it, which it can be hard. It's hard for you to take kind of a 360 look at your life and go, wait, and be objective and be like, okay, I'm going to take that criticism, so to speak, and I'll work with it, good or bad, keep doing what I'm doing, or, okay, I need to alter and adjust. But being honest with yourself about where you're at with things,
It's really important. And learning how to take honesty without judgment towards yourself is tough. It's tough. It takes that is a habit in itself to break. And it's quite tough. I used to use a habit tracker where it was very simple. I just had a wall calendar. And I was learning Italian like 3 years ago. And every day I would practice, I would just put an X through it. And the habit tracker was so simple. It was just don't break the chain, right? So even if it was 2 minutes that I practiced, I would put an X. If it was an hour that I practiced, it gets another X. And it just kept going. And James has another message in here, which is that if you miss a day in your habits, and this is like a daily habit, don't miss twice. When you miss a habit, and you need to like forgive yourself for missing the habit. You're just like, okay, that didn't happen today, but tomorrow we're restarting. You do the habit again, and you make sure you don't miss twice. Because when you miss twice, that's when you basically have to start over to getting in there.
Compounds the other way. Yeah. Either way, it compounds one way or the other. Yeah.
Suiku says, is this long-term views of how you are making progress? Yeah. So basically, you kind of like set your bigger goal, right? Which for me is, I'm still going to use the flossing goal as my as my example. It's much better dental care, right? So that's the main goal, and then you have your small compounding of every day. Okay, we're not only brushing, but we're also flossing, and it's like way better dental health, and we like it. The inversion of all of this is breaking bad habits, which I don't know if it's harder to install a new habit or break a bad habit. But you can use the same systems for both. So here, instead of make it obvious, you would make the habit invisible. How can you remove your exposure to what makes you want to do the habit? How can you remove the cues of your bad habits from your environment? And that's number one. Number two is, instead of making it attractive, you need to make it unattractive. Instead of, give me a bad habit. Instead of biting your nails, right? And, you have to start looking at your nails and, looking at, no, this is a bad one. I don't have enough examples for this. This is not my habit. So, how about, let's stick with doing the dishes, right? So instead of looking at the dishes and they're piled up in the sink, instead of being like, that's okay, it's now unattractive. Being like, we don't like to look at that, and therefore we're going to do something to change it, right? You also highlight the benefits of changing the bad habit, right? It's like, okay, now I have more dishes to serve to my guests who are here, and now I have less work to do all at once on Fridays when I tend to do my dishes, right? It's now, oh, the sink is cleaner, and I'm living a more hygienic lifestyle, and also my mind is clear because I'm not looking at clutter, right? So you start to like list out all the benefits of breaking the bad habit, and that becomes, the habit becomes unattractive.
Sure.
Number three is you gotta make it easy. And when you switch making it easy to make it difficult, make the bad habit difficult, it's like, okay, well, I can't put dishes in the sink. The sink is now lava, and if I put dishes in the sink, I'll be burned. Like, you gotta make it be like, okay, I can't. You increase the frictions, right? So you need to increase the number of steps from how easy it is just to put something right into the sink. Maybe it's putting it right into the dishwasher. And if the dishwasher is full, you unload it. And that's the step that makes it easier, right? Yeah. And then the last one is to make it unsatisfying. It's unsatisfying to look at the pile of dishes, right? And you can use an accountability partner for this. Like every time, and this has to be someone you like, because getting called out on your BS is a lot. and it takes a certain kind of person to be able to accept that. Hello, little bird. I need you to stop chirping in the window here. Do you hear the birds?
Mm-hmm.
They're going to town. Hello. Okay, so you get an accountability partner, and when they see the sick, the dishes, and they tell you, okay, it's time to clean them, or okay, I'll help you clean them, or it's like every day the sink is empty, you get to send a picture of your sink to that person if you don't live with them, right? You make things like that happen so you can break the habit of dirty dishes in the sink. And yeah, that's...
When he talks about the contract, like the accountability...
It's good.
Part of things where... Well, and that's why we have contracts in society. Because it creates a habit that is backed up by having to check in with somebody. When you get a loan for a house, you have to build the habit of making payments on time. How they get you to do that is they make you sign your name at the bottom of a piece of paper that says, I will do this, and if I don't, you can come take X, Y, and Z to pay for the amount of money I've not paid for you.
Yep.
Pay to you for this loan. So that is an accountability instrument, so to speak, or a tool, a habit tool that they use to help you build habits. He talks about putting some things on auto pay, where it's like, okay, these are things that I need to do all the time. Make it easy. Again, make it easy. Make it appealing. Okay, I don't even have to think about it. It automatically comes out of my bank account. Set it up. It's done.
Automation.
It's easy, appealing, one and done. It's automated.
We love it. We love it. Yes.
Free up your brain space.
I'm sorry, you're just going to get birds yell. They're extremely cute. They're just chatty. They're having a book club too. Yes. Can you automate things? Can you delegate things? Can you make your life easier in those two ways? If the answer is even kind of yes, like you gotta. Can you automate payments? Can you automate billing? Can you automate subscription payments? Can you whatever it is? Can you automate your alarm that you set every morning to help you get up at the same time? Yes. We love it. So some of the last things that James talks about in this book is not trying to do too many habits at once. Instead of, I think it's very tempting to, like, New Year's resolution time, to go into the new year and be like, I'm going to change all of these things about me. It's better to start with just one thing and really devote your focus and attention on it. Otherwise, you're just chasing cats in a field and it's a nightmare, and you're never going to catch any cats. You're just going to suffer. So focus on one habit at a time, and like don't be implementing more than like one a month, really. And that includes trying to remove a habit. So you do one or you remove one, but try focus on one. And eventually, little by little, you're going to start building better systems around your life and making things really work. There's a quote I want to read, and this is from early on in the book. Your outcomes are a lagging measure of your habits. You get what you repeat. And that's the core of this book. The things that you repeat in your life, the habits you do, the changes you make, that is what your life becomes. And you will see the outcomes, you'll see the consequences or the achievements of those little things that you repeat. Do you have any good habits that you have in your art studio that you're like, this is top tier? And
one of the things that you'll hear me say if you do visit my stream when I do stream is, if I have artists come in, I'll be like, clean your effing brushes. Clean them. Clean them now. Because they're dirty and they're gross. Clean your brushes. That is a habit that I have. I always clean my brushes. Because it ultimately, again, it compounds. That paint builds up inside of the brush, and it will eventually ruin the brush. That's what ruins brushes. It's not generally that the bristles wear out. It's that they get so splayed from all the paint that's dried up inside of them.
That's the truth.
Well, if you clean your effing brushes, you won't do that anymore. So, yeah.
That one's really good.
Yeah, that's one of those things.
I definitely have like a ritual I do before I go to the studio, which is when I make my first pot of tea of the day, that means the studio is coming next. And I associate making the tea before going to the studio. Like, it's just hooked in. And I've been doing this for so many years. And then after I'm done painting or streaming or whatever, I tidy up for about 5 minutes. I actually usually set a timer, and I'll either wash my brushes, or I'll sweep the studio, or I'll throw away miscellaneous trash that's just lying around. Make sure my rags are all sealed up and not combustible, things like that. Yeah. What kind of habit stacking could one make for cleaning brushes, says Sweeku? Well, I think the stack is more like you don't get to leave the studio. And by studio, I mean wherever you're creating, until you have the brushes clean in your hand. For me, I have to leave the studio in order to go into the house to wash the brushes, because that's where my sink is. I don't have a sink in my studio, but you grab them and you wash them, and you're not allowed to leave until they're clean and back on your desk. And that's kind of a rule. You could even put a sign on your door that just says, "Are the brushes clean?" You could do that. Yeah, and I think, this is a good point to bring up motivation. I feel like when you are starting a new habit, the why is really important. And when you declare what the why is, that's when you can really establish a habit that matters. It's not just, I want to learn Spanish because it's the thing to do. It's like, I'm going to a place where learning this will be useful for the rest of my life. That's a great why, right? Sure. So for cleaning brushes, you want to make tomorrow's experience for yourself smoother and better for the next time you get into the studio, right? You want to make the future you have an easier time at life, and that's why you clean the brushes. At least that's why I clean my brushes. I don't know.
Yeah.
I do a lot of things for future.
Yeah, there's a lot of reason. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, you can even, for me, since I work from 1 to 6, dinner is what happens after I done painting. I'm usually exhausted, and I haven't eaten anything, so I'm starved. So I'm like, the appealing thing at the end of that task is get to sit down and have a meal. Like something as simple as that. Like, I honestly wonder if that is why we have meal times. Is that they were kind of checkpoints throughout the day to build habits around. It automatically just kind of got instilled in society. And it's like everybody, because one of the things he talks about also is the society that you live in often dictates the habits that you have. Because sometimes it'll be either you're shamed for doing something, and that is a very big deterrent in doing or not doing something. And if everybody in your society eats breakfast, lunch, and dinner around the same time, it's going to be easier for you to build a habit into your life around something like that, because everybody else is basically at that same moment in time doing the same thing you are around you. It's like, oh, well, I want to go hang out with them, but I have to eat dinner. Well, they eat dinner now, so let's set it for this. If we're going to set up, I need to have a meeting with somebody for, business or whatever, that both of you have that kind guidepost in your day. Okay, well, then let's do this. We'll do this. It's kind of this, it follows itself. So that's one of the things that's already, built in. Take stock of the environment and the society that is around you. Is your environment will be a huge key in any habit that you're trying to get rid of or to build. No?
One of my habits that I have had, I've been working on this since the beginning of the year, and it was having daily movement. not necessarily exercise, but I wanted to be moving every day. And so I tried to make sure that I have, and I'm such a sucker for my friends. I'm like, if anything gets to be done with my friends, I want to do it with my friends. So I tried to schedule like taking a walk in a park somewhere with a friend at least once a week. And that's one way of matching a habit to a situation, something that I like to do, a habit to reward in this case. Suiku says, are lots of habits associated with the time then? It's yes, but it's also, I think it's more associated with the habit happens before I do something that I already do, or it happens after I do something I already do. And that's more so the time thing. Yeah.
Right. I think that's one thing as far as habits that I think I've learned over time is it's not the time of day that you do them. It's more important what you do them with, because life ebbs and flows. Things happen. Like this week, I like to do yoga when it's quiet. I usually get to do it when nobody's around. And there's not like a distraction going on around me while I'm trying to focus and do this. Well, my roommate, her days off are random. And it happened to be she had 2 in a row in the middle of the week. And I'm like, how am I going to do this? Well, to me, it's more important that I do the task than when, like, what time of day, like at 1 o'clock, this is when I do this.
Yeah.
I think that's a quick way to ruin a habit, is make it so rigid that if it doesn't happen at that time, you feel like you've been defeated, and it's like, well, then why even try? What I did was I just adjusted it. She likes to take naps during the day. Okay, so when she's taking a nap, or if she had to leave for a long enough time that I could do yoga, I just did it then. And it still worked. It was like, okay, I just need to focus on what I'm trying to do. And like you said, keep that on track. Lest you miss it, that's the more important thing.
Yeah.
Still needs to get done during the day. It doesn't matter when. It's making it easier for you to get it done is the biggest issue.
It's true.
So yeah,
it's so good. There are ways of, maybe y'all are thinking, okay, I have a goal in mind. It's not necessarily a habit I want to implement, but it's something I want to do. Maybe it's have my very first gallery show or something like that, right? The habits that you make to lead up to that goal are really important, and learning how to go backwards from, okay, what is my why? I want to have a gallery show. Okay, what is it going to take to get there that my current habits aren't doing? And that's a fun kind of like exercise to do, where you break down, okay, what do I need to have a gallery show? Maybe it's 10 paintings. Okay, how many paintings do I already have? I already have 5. So I need to make 5 paintings so I can submit them to a gallery. Do I have one in mind? Do I have a gallery picked out? No. Okay, so the habit becomes, 1, spend time painting every day, but 2, spend 10 minutes a day researching galleries to submit to, and 3, maybe it's spend 10 minutes on another day working on like your resume and your CV and your website or whatever. You break down the bigger goals into smaller habits that give you the time to reach those big goals. And those are some of the compounding effects that I started thinking about when I was reading this book. I was like, oh, you could take this into such a huge direction, where it's like, oh, I could transform my whole life using teeny tiny changes. But it takes some good observation of yourself and some good dedication. And when you have a moment, and I think that real changes happen when you are interrupted from your habits, despite your best intentions of, I want to do yoga every day, right? It's, your roommate's in town, or your roommate's in this space, and you don't know if you can make it work. And you are like, okay, maybe the answer is waiting for her to leave, and maybe the answer is being like, hey, I want to do yoga. Can you go into your room and can we have some quiet time for like 40 minutes or so, whatever it takes. And being both vulnerable with your goals and your habits, and being both just like expressive and very communicative about what you want with the people who are around you, everything you do will play into whether you reach that big goal that your habits have led to. And it's very like, oh, this is cool, but also this is daunting. And I think that's what makes this book so powerful.
Yeah. I think one of the things that he pointed out that was really interesting was, and it's something that I've always been fascinated about, another book to kind of dig into down the line for anybody, is emotional agility. It talks about this. Emotional agility is things that are literally hardwired into us as human beings that have been there for thousands of years. Were built as survival mechanisms. And one of the things is that he talks about is instant gratification. Part of that is because back then people couldn't waste time. They would freeze to death or whatever, they would die of exposure. So they had to know right away whether or not it was going to work or not. Well, we don't have to worry about that now. We have the luxury of being able to see the long tail of things and go, okay, so since our brain is wired for instant gratification, we need to retrain it to understand longer term outcomes are far better for us than a short term outcome. We did like a study where they tried to see, you know, which was more beneficial, essentially a long term outcome or a short term outcome. And they figured out that the long-term outcomes had far more payoff than anything that happened immediately. But it's getting yourself past that point of compounding, or it gets to the point where you can see that benefit, you know?
Yeah. It's a good book. It's a good book. I've linked the book that Nomad was just talking about into the chat here, but yeah, I guess final thing I really liked about this book is that it referenced other books that we've read for book club. It referenced Twyla Tharp's book, The Creative Habit, which was kind of cool. I was like, oh wait, we did that. And it also referenced another one, and I've already forgotten which one it was, but that was very fun. I'm giving this book like 5 out of 5. I really liked this book. I enjoyed reading it. It's you can read it probably 100 times and ignite your need to change whatever habit that you want to change or implement. How would you rate it?
There's so much there. I think that you would learn something new every time that you read it for quite a while, because there is so much information there that you may because you'll grab a hold. Your brain will grab a hold of something. You'll go, "Oh, I want to try this." So you'll read the rest of it, but maybe not pick up on some of the more nuanced stuff that he throws in there. Yeah. So the second time around, you're not looking for what you initially looked at. Now you're actually looking at something else. So it's kind of, it's really cool. It's a great book. Great book.
Super, super good. How many stars would you rate this out of 5?
We give it a 5 as well. I think it's one of those books that is life-changing. I can read books about, art and art business and all of that, but things that change your life at the atomic level are huge. I think that's why he's had as many people come to him for help as he has, because it's so simple. It's like, oh geez, why didn't I think of that?
Right.
It's taken all these years of research to figure these things out. So, it's super useful for all kinds of stuff. It's open-ended.
It's very, very good. I love this book. Do you have any final thoughts about this book?
Mindset of not beating yourself up for all the things that you haven't done, need to do, or have done wrong. That is not, that's not what this is about. It's not him going, you should be doing this. It's far from that. He even points that out. He's just like, listen, bigger issue is getting you to do it. I'm not here to beat you over the head. That's not going to get you to do anything. Unless it's a negative reinforcement that helps you not do something that's harmful or whatever to yourself, then by all means, take the shame and use it as a negative deterrent,
Yes.
you know? But yeah, it's getting beyond that point of just beating yourself up for, you know, X, Y, and Z and getting into it. Just come to it with an open mind. Yeah, I think it makes you learn a lot about yourself too if you give it the opportunity.
Yeah, it's quite good. If you like what we've been talking about here, you should definitely check out Atomic Habits. Mm-hmm. It's a fantastic book. There's like a gajillion copies, you know, 2 million copies sold. So you can get this book for super cheap and definitely from the library. And yeah, you should check it out. If you are looking for more talks like this, I have a podcast to recommend. This is a guest I've had on the Brushwork podcast a couple of episodes ago. Her name is Life Coach Baker, and she does a lot of great 45-minute to hour-long discussions on habit building and perfectionism and all sorts of things like that. Would recommend. You should check it out. I'll link her in the show notes. But for now, shall I tell you what next month's book is about?
Do it.
Let's do it. Okay, so the next book is more artsy than habitual. This book is called 7 Days in the Art World, and it is by Sarah Thornton. And I thought this was a novel at first, but it's not a novel.
No, it is not.
It's a vivid ethnography. Yes, an international hit about a series of day-in-the-life narrative sets from New York to London to Venice, Tokyo. It explores the dynamics of creativity, taste, status, money, and the search for meaning in life. I think this book is going to be dramatic. I think it's going to be saucy. I think it's going to be very fun. And I cannot wait to gossip about all the people in this book.
I've already read the first day.
Oh.
And it is fantastic.
Oh, good. Okay, I can't wait. So we are meeting next on April 5th, 14th? April 4th. Let's see. I wrote this down in the commands here.
You mean May 14th?
May 14th is what I meant. April. Incredible. It's already April. It's May next. Oh, wait. Why did that go away? Baby, come back. There we go. Okay. So yeah, we're reading that next month. Thanks, Nomad, for...
We're voracious readers here, Wendy, by the way.
We just read so fast.
We do tackle some big books. We tackled Ninth Street Women, which is a very thick book, but we split it up half and half.
We did.
So that's how we tackled it. But yeah, you're not daunted by the size of a book.
It's very good. Yeah, Nomad, thanks for joining me for Art Book Club. This was fun.
Wonderful as always.
Wonderful as always. All right. That's it for today's episode of Brushwork and the Art Book Club. Thanks to Visual Nomad for joining me today as we read Atomic Habits. The next book is, again, 7 Days in the Art World, and all of that and more that we talked about is in the show notes. Till next time, make good choices. Bye!